Hello, and welcome to Simple Man Sermons, the preachings of a simple man called by God to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Question: does it seem like we live in a confused culture, a confusing time and place? Does it seem like culture as a whole, if not you individually, seems a little bit confused, a little bit lost? If you agree with that presupposition, that's what today's content is going to be about. I am going to pick on the low-hanging fruit here. When your culture, I'm going to go out on a limb for this low-hanging fruit and say, if your culture doesn't know what a man and a woman is, it's confused. One of the most easy, cut and dry, black and white, biologically defined X and Y chromosome, X and X chromosome, just in so many ways. It's clearly seen the difference between a man and a woman. But our culture has gotten so confused that it doesn't know the difference between a man and a woman anymore. And that's not even being hyperbolic. That's being literal. Our culture and society would tell you that you can't even tell the difference between a man and a woman. Or that gender is fluid. Ask any other culture throughout history. Right? You went to the Greeks or the Romans or the ancient Egyptians and said, hey, we can't really figure out what a man and a woman is. They would think you were, well, you fill in the blank of words they would use for what you were if you couldn't figure out what a man and a woman was. It reminds me of a verse in the Bible. Claiming to be wise, they became fools. They worship and serve the creation rather than the Creator. See, the truth is, because God said it, God made man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. That's how confused our society and culture has become. Let's look at another one that stands out to me as ridiculous. Now, do you think that our culture idolizes food? It's a question. Wrestle with that for a second. Do you think our culture idolizes food? You see, we would look at people in times past and laugh at them for having these ridiculous idols and worshiping nature and the sun and the moon and the stars, and it is ridiculous. It's idolatry. Do we not in this culture worship food? Are there not entire groups of people who have their life revolve around food, as if their life did revolve around food? That is an idol, men and women. That is an idol. It's as ridiculous as a golden calf. Food was made, a beautiful gift from God. Food is a gift from God so that you can use it to serve God. You can use it to live to serve God. And we have perverted that, and now pervert just means to go away from the original, right? It could be used for male and female relations. It could be used for all manner of things. But we've perverted that and to say that food is a gift from God so that we can live to serve God and enjoy it in the process. But we've perverted that so much that people live for food and live to serve food. That is ridiculous. That is confused. That is not the proper order of things. The stomach is for food. The food for the stomach. But they'll both be destroyed. Food for the stomach and the stomach for food, and God will destroy them both. That's from 1 Corinthians. Look at what our culture has done with marriage. Redefining it as if it was theirs to redefine. Now, if you're the worker, if you're the craftsman and you make something and you want to remake it, that's okay. But if something is not yours, you didn't create it, you didn't make it, it's not yours to redefine. Anyway, let's go to Matthew chapter 19. When Jesus had finished these words, he left Galilee and came into a region of Judea beyond the Jordan. And large crowds followed him, and he healed them there. Some Pharisees came to Jesus, testing him and asking, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason at all?" And he answered and said, "Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, 'For this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh.' So, they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, no person is to separate." They said to him, "Why then did Moses command to give her a certificate of divorce and send her away?" He said to them, "Because of your hardness of heart, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it has not been this way. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another woman commits adultery." You see, marriage is clearly defined, despite what modern-day culture and society would have you believe. It's clearly defined by the one who created man himself and created marriage. Right? God did that, not man. It is not man's place to redefine it. We see very clearly here a man and his wife, a man and a woman, joined together, not to be separated by trivial matters. Now, adultery is a grievous sin, despite what today's culture and society would have you believe. And divorce is a horrible thing, despite what culture and society would have you believe. Now, these are just, again, some of the low-hanging fruit. All one has to do is look around and see how confused and twisted our culture and society has become. Shouldn't we ask ourselves, why? Why is this the way that it is? Well, we've turned away from God. We, declaring ourselves to be wise, became fools. God said he created man and woman in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. In his very own image. Special, set apart. And man comes along and says, "You know what? That's what God says, but I have a better idea. How about we came from a monkey? How about one day at some point, billions of years ago, in some primordial goop," and this is the garbage that I was taught in school, keep in mind, that somehow that nobody can explain or reproduce or duplicate, which would be science. They can't do it scientifically, so they just make something up. Someday, sometime, there was some spark in some primordial goo, and then something became alive from nothing somehow. We don't know how, but we're definitely not going to say God did it. And then one day it decided, I want to be a multicelled organism. I'm going to be more complex, and I'm going to become some kind of algae or primitive life form. Then I'm going to become, nobody really knows how this happened either, keep in mind. They're just making it up as they go along. And then there was some, fish-type creature that decided one day, you know what, that land looks pretty chill. I'm going to go up there and relax. And then it just decided to start crawling on these legs. Let's not go down the whole coelacanth rabbit hole that they figured out was a complete garbage theory, that a fish decided to walk on land. But they're sticking with it. And this fish one day decided, you know what, I'd like to be warm-blooded. And then there's some crazy mammal thing, rat, shrew type creature. That's how much these scientists think about you, that you came from a rat. That decided one day I wanted to crawl up a tree and become a monkey. That one day decided, you know what, I'd like a bigger brain, let me become a man. And we wonder why people are so confused as to what they are and who they are. We think somehow this is a better way than just listening to God when he says, in the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. You are made in the very image of God. And culture and society would by and large throw that all away to believe they came from a rat. I wonder how we got here. That's part of it. Let's look at what Satan did in the garden, right? When the serpent comes to tempt Eve, one of the very simple instructions that they were given, don't eat from this one tree. They were put in a paradise, in a beautiful garden with all their needs met, overabundance of things. And God said, don't eat of this one tree. Of all the other trees you can eat, but of this tree, don't eat it. And the serpent comes along and says, I know God said this, but why don't you just do whatever you want to do? Right? I know God said don't eat of this, but really? I mean, do you really want to listen to God? Shouldn't you just do whatever you want? Why don't you eat of this tree? And she looks and, well, you know the story. Right? Is Satan not having a field day with us today? Is that not what we are doing? Everybody doing whatever they want instead of listening to what God says to do. Is that not what you can basically boil all sin down as? Saying, God, I know what you want me to do, but I'm going to do what I want to do. When the Bible explicitly warns us against this, you shall not do as you are doing here today, every man doing whatever is right in his own eyes. This is Deuteronomy 12. New King James. You shall not at all do as we are doing here today, every man doing whatever is right in his own eyes. That's not what you were called to do. God gives us instructions. The law, it says, was given for our good. It wasn't for God's good. God is good all the time. God is never any less good no matter what we do. It was given for our good so that we could be good. And we've basically turned our back on God and said, God, I know that you say to do this and to do that, but you know what? I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? We forget what a man and a woman is? Our entire lives fall into despair and depravity, and our culture collapses, and we turn to complete and utter despair and depression, and we're lost as a society and as a culture. But at least I get to do whatever I want to do, right? Man thinking he knows better than God. Do you think you know better than God? If you put it that black and white, hopefully, if you're listening to this, you would say, no, of course I don't think I know better than the all-knowing creator of the universe. But when it comes down to it, that's what sin is saying, I know that you're saying to do this thing, but I really want to do this thing. I know you say pretty clearly, God, you shall not commit adultery. But you know what? My wife's not giving me the attention that I want, or shouldn't I go out and live my best life? I'm just not happy, and this woman is batting her eyes at me, and she's so pretty, and she gets me, and I know you say don't commit adultery, but I'm going to do what I want to do. Right? That's what sin is. Saying, God, I know you say this is bad, but I'm going to do it anyway. I know you say not to do this very clearly, and Jesus reinforces it and says, you shall not commit adultery, but I'm going to do it anyway. Right? So very simply, how did we get here? How did we get so lost and confused and perverted as a culture and a society? We turned our back on God. We stopped listening to him because we'd rather do what we want to do. It saddens me, and I live in America. Even if you live in many other places that came from a Western worldview that were once part of the Roman, Holy Roman, medieval Europe, Western culture, you had at one time a rich Christian heritage built on Judeo-Christian values and worldviews. Those cultures once recognized the beauty of Christianity and shunned their pagan ways. The Vikings, some of the greatest warriors in history, when they saw the wisdom of Christ, they converted and became Christian. The Romans, who were once persecuting Christians, Constantine, saw a sign and converted, and the Roman Empire itself converted by God's divine providence and spread the beauty of Christ throughout the world. And now, for some reason, we think we know better. We think we've progressed past it. But what we've gotten is confused and lost and depressed, because depravity is the natural progression of sin. And a microcosm when Paul was on the road to Damascus, going the wrong way. When he saw the light of Christ, literally, he repented and converted and started following God. Now, I don't know what culture and society will do, but will you turn back to God? Will you listen to God? Will you continue on the right road? Will you do whatever is right in your own eyes, or will you listen to the one who made you and gave you right rulings and judgments for your good, and stop doing whatever you want to do and doing what God wants you to do? Will you do that? Will you be the minority today in this culture? Yeah, you will. Should that matter? Absolutely not. From the mouth of Jesus himself. Enter by the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate, and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. There will come a very real day, whoever you are listening to this, where you will be judged, where I will be judged. Pick your road. Pick your path. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.